Hi. Hi. You're gonna fall. You're gonna fall. You licked the lens. Yeah. So what are the plans for the Mustang coming this summer? Let's talk about that. First of all, I got a new lens for this camera and it looks really good. I like it very much. I'm very happy with it. Hopefully you guys can notice a difference in quality. There's a lot more depth of field. The background's a lot more blurred, but just in addition, it's just a little bit more sharp, has much better light. It goes to a much lower aperture, which is very, very nice. It's Sigma 16mm f1.4 for the Canon EOS M mount for any of you who are interested. I'm super happy about it. This is not what this video is about. First things first, let's talk about the engine bay. Just totally went for not at all where the hood release is. Let's talk about under the hood. As far as under the hood goes, I think mostly what I want to do is just get this car tuned. It needs tuned very badly because it has long tube headers, has an intake, and none of those gains are really being realized as the engine is just sitting here doing nothing. So ideally what I would like to do is get a tune by Bama. If you buy a tuner from AmericanMuscle.com, you get free, basically lifetime Bama tunes. Their tunes are fairly proven. I understand they're probably not the greatest tunes known to man, but a lot of people are really happy with them. If I was ever gonna get this car supercharged or something like that, obviously I would go with a legit dyno or street tune or whatever. I would not probably be trying to run like a baseline E-tune, but people have had good luck with them and I think I'm gonna try it out. I would also like to replace this intake with a different one. The BBK intake is okay. I don't really think there's anything wrong with it, but probably what I'm gonna do is get an SR Performance intake. It's very affordable and has good reviews all in all. Also, this is just my thoughts on it. The BBK intake has almost a 90-degree bend right here, and then it's just a straight pipe. The SR Performance has a little bit of a bend here and a little bit more of a bend later, and it just looks like it would have slightly, I guess, smoother airflow to it, which, in my opinion, could possibly help with better performance. Plus, it's black with red accents, which I think looks better than the BBK intake. Even though I love the color blue, I'm not really a huge fan of blue accents. I think that they're hard to pull off on cars, especially kind of this color of blue. And if I'm not mistaken, I feel like this BBK intake was probably the polished finish when it was new. And it looks like someone wrinkle coated it black later, and it doesn't look very good. But that's the major thing. There's some general tune-up items I would like to do to the engine before I get the tune for it, like spark plugs, and probably just replace coil packs with some better ones, like some MSD coil packs or something, just because that seems like a good idea to do at the same time. It's decent preventative maintenance. I don't think that it's actually a problem, but it's something I might want to consider. I would also consider doing a Boss 302 intake manifold, but I'm not 100% sure on whether or not I'm going to do that immediately or not. If I want to do it later, I know that I can just get a revised tune from Bama for free, so that's probably what I'll do, and for right now I'll just do those basic things. I know this car has a lot of horsepower that's just sitting on the shelf doing nothing without a tune, so we're gonna get it tuned. And that's thing number one that I definitely want to accomplish this summer when it comes to this car. Thing number two is I have some aesthetic stuff that I would really like to do to this car as well. When it comes to aesthetic things on this car, I generally like how the rear of this car looks, but I think that it can be improved. For one, where would be a deck lid panel, you can just see I just wiped some of that salt off of there. This is not actually a panel. Somebody just painted this matte black at some point, and they didn't mask it particularly well either, as you can see. I don't mind the taillights. They're not my favorite taillights for the S197 2011 to 2014s, but I think I'm gonna keep them, unless maybe way down the road. I get tired of them, but I generally like how they look. I don't think they're the cleanest taillights, but I think that it'll go with the overall color scheme of the car. So I'm probably gonna keep those. However, I would like to get a different spoiler. It looks to me like this probably had a California Special spoiler on it at some point. You can sort of kind of see some weird little like wear marks around where they have these like hardware, just like hole block offs essentially. So I think it probably had a California Special at some point before they just put the wicker bill on this like stock looking duck lip kind of spoiler. And I think that's what I'd like to do again. I've always liked how the California Special looks, and I think that that would really tie the rear end of this car together with a black deck lid that's not just crappily painted on the back of the car. Another major thing that looks much, much better on the 2013 and 14 S197s is that they have a nicer looking rear diffuser, or whatever you want to call it, section of the bumper. It's not really a diffuser. It's more so just kind of like a lower trim valence or whatever. This one's not terrible, but there's definitely better looking ones, and I would like to get one of those. And while we're down here, first of all, Rip Ken Block, gotta support with the Hoonigan license plate frame. Also, it's silver and black, so, you know, that matches perfectly. But while we're down here, I think I might want to get a new exhaust axle back section as well. I thought initially that this car had an MBRP race exhaust system, but after looking closer at it, I believe it's actually the MBRP street system. There's nothing wrong with the street system. It sounds really good. But the one thing that I wish was a little bit different about it is that on cold start, it sounds good, but I just wish it sounded a little bit more aggressive, and I wish it sounded a little bit deeper. It's slightly more tinny and raspy than I would like, and I think getting a slightly more aggressive axle back system, although would make it louder and probably slightly more obnoxious, doesn't really matter. This is not like a daily car. I think it would also help to get more of the sound that I'm going for. Tell you what, let's just give it a cold start and take a listen to it right now as it sits. Hasn't been started for a couple days, so it's gonna be cold. So I'm an idiot, and I didn't press record when I did the actual cold start with this. So that was like a warm-ish cold start. It doesn't sound that different. It sounds good, don't get me wrong. And I like how it sounds at idle, and I like that because it has headers, it's not that loud as it's just sitting here idling. It's not that loud as I'm driving around generally, but it still can be very loud as I get on it. But I think, I mean, a lot of it is because of the headers, but there's a lot of rasp. And I think that the street catback kind of accentuates it, whereas if I had something that was actually slightly more aggressive, I feel like a little bit more of the deeper, throatier sound would come through. So I'm considering a few different options. One that I probably will actually end up going with is the Solo Performance axle back system on this car. Solo Performance, their axle back is really, really cool because it has essentially, it's like a J-pipe design, which cancels out a lot of the drone frequencies, but it makes like a really deep sound. I might go with that, and let's listen to a couple baby revs because it's not all the way warmed up, but it's been sitting here running for a few minutes. So yeah, I think you probably noticed that as soon as there's any sort of, I guess, not really load, but I guess you could call it load put on the exhaust, it gets raspy very quickly, and it does sound good. I like how it sounds, but I think it can sound better, and we're probably gonna go with the Solo system. Worst case scenario, if I don't like it, I can always put this one back on and sell that one. So I think it's worth trying out. The main other thing I would really like to do this summer is the suspension setup. The suspension setup on this car right now is not great. And I think I'm gonna go with Steeda on suspension setup, and I'll describe this a little bit more in a video later, but the suspension setups that Steeda sells, they sell essentially like stage level kits, and their kits, I mean, Steeda knows what they're doing when it comes to making a solid rear axle Mustang handle, and that is what I'm trying to do. You can just tell when you're driving this car that it wants to handle well and that it can. It's just held back a little bit by the stock suspension design and things like new control arms for the rear and, I mean, overall better shocks and springs and bushings and stuff like that will go a long way. So we're gonna see exactly how much handling prowess you can get out of a basically stock S197 Mustang GT. Stage 3 on the Steeda setup, I believe, comes with relocated front ball joints as well as a bump steer kit, which is probably necessary for a lowered Mustang. It also comes with full Steeda Pro Action, I believe it is, shocks with Steeda Sport lowering springs, as well as I believe it comes with an adjustable panhard bar. I could be wrong on that, but it comes with a lot of different stuff to basically change out a lot of the suspension setup and make the car handle much, much better. It also comes with a front strut tower brace, which actually can clear the Boss 302 manifold, so if that's something that I do want to do, I would have to change out the front brace anyway. So that whole setup is a really good value. If in the future I ever want to go, I guess, just that much more aggressive on the setup and maybe get like an actual set of coilovers to replace the Steeda shocks and springs, I might consider doing something like Fortunato, but we'll see how the Steeda stuff does because this is primarily going to be a street car, and if I ever want to do a track build, I would probably get something else. So that is that. So what about our stretch goals, aka if we could somehow make it happen, what else would we like to do? The major thing for me is a new set of wheels and tires, because the wheels and tires that are on this car are okay, but they're definitely not my favorite. I do not know what brand these are, but they have 302 center caps for some reason that are like finished with like a smoke spray paint, which is interesting. So I definitely would like to get a different set of wheels and tires and get better fitment. The fitment on this is not 100% terrible, but it's definitely not very aggressive. It's much more aggressive in the rear, but I think we can fit some 305s on the rear pretty easy. And these that are on the rear right now, these are 285s. I think we can fit 285s up front instead of the 255s. So I think that would give it pretty neutral handling characteristics all around. So I think that's what we're gonna try to do if we can. And beyond wheels and tires, the main other stretch goals that I would have for this car this summer would probably be some additional stuff when it comes to the suspension setup. Lower rear control arms is a huge thing. Upper rear control arm, it's just one mount. I believe it mounts to the pumpkin on the rear diff, if I'm not mistaken. A rear strut tower brace, essentially. There's an X brace that Steeda also sells that goes in the trunk of the car and kind of does some general stiffening there, as well as a panhard brace and a few other simple braces and stuff like that. And mainly, if we can manage this past the wheels and tires, I would also love to do a big brake kit on this car. The brakes that are on this car right now, they're not bad for around town and generally driving on the road, but the Brembos that you can get on these cars are much, much better. Even the Brembos that are on this car are not known for being the most fantastic brakes ever, but right now the brakes that are on this car, I believe it's like 11.9 inches for the rear, and it's like 12 point something up front when it comes to the size of the discs. 11.9 on the rear of this car for a car of this size and weight is a little bit ridiculous, considering that the stock size on my 350Z rear brakes before I upgraded them was close to what the fronts are on this. But basically with upgrading to the Brembos, it's a 14-inch front rotor with a 4-piston caliper, and on the rear, oddly enough, even the GT500 of this generation, which is a 662 horsepower, 200 mile per hour car, by the way, still uses a 1-piston, tiny little brake caliper on the back. It's actually the exact same brake caliper as the V6 Mustang, which is insane. However, it uses a different hub design, so it's mounted in a completely different spot, and it has like 13.9 or something inch rear rotors. So there is actually kits that they sell to adapt the stock rear caliper to the size of the GT500 rear rotors, which is probably what I would do to try to get them matched a little bit. The one thing that I don't like is one thing that's not mentioned enough when it comes to big brake kit upgrades is the huge aesthetic gains you looking at, you know, like a big 4-piston caliper on these huge discs behind a nice set of wheels is just chef's kiss beautiful. That was one of my favorite things about my 350Z, when I would look past the shoddy paint and the crappy cracked carbon fiber hood and see those beautiful wheels with those beautiful brakes. It made everything worth it. And having a junky single piston, you know, sliding, floating caliper design on the rear of the car is kind of disappointing, but as long as it gets better performance and I get rid of the really ugly blue color, I'm fine. It's weird because I love blue. I just really don't like blue on brake calipers and stuff like that. It does depend on the car, and it depends on the color of blue and how well it's done. This is like almost a navy blue, and in my opinion it just looks like a cheapy homemade spray paint job, and I don't like it. I would also love to refresh the front end of this car a little bit. Again, I like the headlights that are on it, but I don't love the front lip that's on it. Just like the taillights, these are S550 style front headlights. Genius. I'm so good at English. But no, these are headlights that are meant to essentially emulate the style of the S550s, and I think they look good. I don't have an issue with them. They're a black bezel, which I like. I like the black grille on this car. I think that it fits with the color scheme. What I have seen on some Mustangs, especially Roush Mustangs, is they'll paint black up to this body line around the top of the front bumper, and I think that looks super mean. I'll throw a picture up for reference of what I'm talking about, and I might want to do that on this bumper, but mainly this front lip. This is the RTR, or at least RTR style front lip. I don't hate it, but it's definitely not my favorite. I think that the Boss 302 front fascia with like the Laguna Seca front lip looks much better than this. So I'd like to do that as well. There's probably plenty of other tiny little small things I'm forgetting. But all in all, I'm already very happy with this car. There's not a ton of things that I think need to be changed on it, except for this sticker. I don't like this sticker. I don't know why this sticker's here. Sure, it looks cool on like a laptop, not on the back of the car. But although I already really like this car as is, I think a few small changes will make it look really nice. Just in my opinion, changing the front fascia to the like Boss 302 style front fascia, and then following this little side splitter deal we have here into a new rear diffuser, I think would tie the car together just that much better. I do like the two-tone of this car. I've said it about this car, and I've said it again and again and again, and it's ironic considering that my wife and I also own this car, and we also had the silver Subaru before this one. I don't like silver very much, but I think that the two-tone silver and black color of this looks very good. One other small aesthetic change I will probably do is get rid of these like Corvette Grand Sport fender stripes and do something that is similar to this to, you know, break up the big silver on the side a little bit, but probably it will be there instead, and, you know, continue the general color scheme of the car, but in a slightly more cohesive way than just having the Grand Sport looking stripes on one corner of the car for no reason. So yeah, hopefully you guys are looking forward to seeing more on this car. I love this car very much and I'm super excited about it. I know that Mustangs are everywhere, but I hope that you guys are excited to see what I do to my Mustang. I want to make it my own. This is a super fun car. It's the fastest car that I've ever owned, and I think that it will be worth your while sticking around and looking to see what we do with this thing. No, but genuinely, I can't wait to see how this car develops and continuing to drive it during the summer and stuff like that. It's a ton of fun. If you've never tried a Mustang and you've never really thought about it, honestly, give it some thought if you've never owned anything like this, because this is a lot of fun, it really is. And I also have more stuff coming for my Dakota. We still have some stuff to do to that. I know that the last video that I did on that didn't really hardly get any views. I'm sure not a lot of people are super interested in a 90s Dakota, but hey, it's car content, it's fun, I'm enjoying doing this, and that's what's important. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys later.